Hello again, fourth year students. Today we are going to talk about the characteristics of a good test. The test is a tool of assessment. This fact we have studied it before, and we said that in order to make the test achieve what it has been set to achieve or to accomplish, it has to be both good and effective. So in order to be good and effective, the test should have a number of features or characteristics that we are going to talk about today. We start with the first feature of the good test. We find that it is called validity. Validity refers to the extent to which a test measures what it is supposed to measure. So, the question of validity is concerned with whether the test is achieving the objective that it is intended to measure or not. This is the meaning of the definition of validity. So, if I make a test to measure a certain skill in language, for instance, listening comprehension, I have to make sure that all the test items that I am going to include in my test should be about what listening comprehension and not any other skill or component of language. Validity has types, and these types are four. If we start with the first one, it is called content validity. What does it mean, content validity? What does the content validity mean? It means, or it refers to the degree of correspondence between the test content and the content of the materials to be tested. So, the materials that you are going to include in your test, your test items, should reflect the materials that you have taught to your students in a course that was taught to them before having the test. So, what do the content or the materials include? The materials include both the topics that you taught as a teacher to your students and the objectives, okay? The objectives that you aim to achieve beyond teaching these materials and having or testing them for your students. Number two, or the second type of validity, is called what? Face validity. Face validity is the way the test looks to the examinees, and we mean by the examinees is the students, the testees, the test administrators, educators, and the like. Okay? So, how will the test look for those people? This is what we mean by face validity. Is it going to look for them that it is the right test, the acceptable test, the suitable test, or not? So some experts in testing, they regard this feature or this type of validity as a superficial one because it only depends on the appearance of the test, and it cannot be measured by any form or any statistic procedure. Yet it is important, okay, that although some people, okay, who are specialized in testing, believe that it is a feature or a type of validity that cannot be measured accurately, but it is at the same time important. For instance, a test that is made a reading comprehension for children Can I use it to test the reading comprehension for beginners, adults who are beginners in learning the language? So it will appear what? Silly. From the look of such a test, okay, is going to be looked as what? As a silly test for the adults, although they are beginners, although they might have the same level of the children in language. But the construction of the test, the layout of the test, the language used in the test, maybe even the pictures used in the test are not suitable for the adults. They are suitable for children. So here we judged the validity of the test from the outlook of this test. Okay? So face validity will likely be high if learners encounter the following things. If the face validity can be high if learners face or have a well-constructed expected format with familiar tasks, a format of the test that is suitable to their level, and the task of the test or the test items of the test are familiar to them. A test that is clearly doable within the allotted time limit. Items that are clear and uncomplicated. Directions that are clear. Tasks that are related to their coursework, and here we are talking about what? Content validity. And a difficulty level that presents a reasonable challenge. Okay? The third type of validity is called criterion-related validity. And here, this type of validity investigates the correspondence between the scores obtained from this test, from the test that you have made for your students, and the scores that you have already obtained from an outside criterion measure. Okay? So you are going to correlate between the two sets of the scores. You are going to compute the correlation between them, and the value that you are going to get will tell you whether your test was valid or not. There are two types of criterion-related validity, depending on with which type of criterion that you are comparing the scores of your test. So either you are comparing the scores of your test with a test, an international test, for example, the TOEFL or an IELTS, that the same students had at the same time, okay, have at the same time. So you are having what? A concurrent validity. Okay, so here you are measuring the scores of that your students have got in your test, or comparing these scores with what? With the scores they have got when they did what, or when they have taken an international test, such as the TOEFL or such as the IELTS. For instance, they say that, suppose that you have a number of students who have applied to be admitted to a certain college, and they have been subjected to the TOEFL. Okay, so you are going to take their scores, the scores that they have got in the TOEFL test, and compare them with with a test, for instance, an oral test you made for them, and in the first week of their studying in that college. So you see here, the time is not so long between the two tests, so that you can compare the two sets of scores in order to find out whether your test was valid or not, whether the scores they are going to be comparable or different. Another type of criterion validity is called predictive validity. And here you are going to do the same as the concurrent validity. Also, you are going to compare the scores that your students have got in the test that you made for them with what? With a test that is going to be you also going to make for them, but after a long time. Okay, so suppose that at the beginning of the year you make a test for your students, and then at the end of the semester you made for them another test, and here you are going to compare what the results that you have got in order to find out whether these results or these scores are correlated or not. And so here you are going to find out how much your test was valid, and it is called predictive. Okay, why is it called here predictive validity? Because the scores that your students have got in the first test or the test that you made for them at the beginning of the year help you to what? To predict, to expect, to foretell their future performance. Okay. The fourth type of validity is called construct validity. First of all, we need to understand what the term construct means. A construct is a psychological term that indicates a theory, okay, or ability or a skill that happens to be in the human brain, and this attribute or feature or proficiency or skill or ability that you have in the mind has been accounted for by what? By an established theory. So how are we going to apply this definition to language testing? In language testing, a construct refers to what? Refers to an underlying ability that is hypothesized in a theory of language. Okay, so here we are talking about what? We are talking about language skills or language abilities. And we know that we have the language skills, we have listening, we have reading, we have speaking, writing. Okay, usually these skills are tested based on what? Theories. We have the structural theory, if you remember our approach in teaching and testing, the communicative, the integrative, if you remember. So each theory or approach or method in teaching and testing has been based on a certain theory to measure the skills of the students or the learners of the foreign language. So your test is said to have a construct validity if it measures the ability or the skill that it sets to measure. For instance, suppose that you are a teacher of English and you want to make a speaking or a conversational exam or test for your students. So the speaking test or the oral interview or the conversation test should be based on measuring your students' knowledge and abilities in 5 important items. What are they? They are pronunciation, okay, fluency, grammatical accuracy, vocabulary use, and sociolinguistic appropriateness. Okay, so you are going to distribute the score, the total score of the test on these 5 items or criteria. If you are going to do that, okay, so your test is going to have what? A construct validity, because here when you are going to observe the performance of your students, you are going to measure all these things and give him or her a score according to these components of the speaking activity. But if you gave your student the score according to two components of these and not all of them, okay, such as you chose only, you said that, okay, I'll judge your performance depending on only grammar and pronunciation. So can we say that here your test has a construct validity? Can we say that your test has measured the speaking ability? Okay, no. Why? Because we know that in order to measure the speaking ability, you have to measure all these components together. You should not select 2 or 3 and leave the others. So when you do that, okay, when you measure all the components of the skill and give your student a mark or a score on each one of them, your test is going to be said that it has a construct validity, that it measures effectively the skill or the ability that it is set out to measure. Okay, so here we talked about validity, the first feature. We defined the validity and we talked about its 4 types. Now we come to factors that affect test validity. Okay, what affects the test validity can be having unclear directions, okay, too easy or too difficult test items. So the test can either be below the level of your students or above their level, okay, and here your test is not going to be valid. Poorly constructed and or ambiguous items. The items of the test are not clear, they are not structured well, so the students will not be able to know what to do or how to answer. Disarrangement of items and correct responses. We know that usually the test items should be arranged progressively. What does it mean? It means that you arrange your questions and the questions in your test from the easy to the difficult. Okay? Also, when you are having, for instance, multiple choice test or true-false test, you have to arrange the answers randomly. You should not arrange them according to a certain pattern in order, and then this way you are going to what? To motivate your students to guess. Okay? So here, if you are following or if you are arranging your test items or response items in this way, your test is going to be what? Valid. But if you do not follow this way or procedure in arranging your test items, it is said that, or your test is going to be said that it is not valid or it lacks validity. The second important feature is called reliability. So what does reliability mean? Reliability means that it is the degree to which an assessment tool, which is a test, produces stable and consistent results. So it is the stability or consistency of a certain test scores. So how can we estimate or find out the reliability of our test? How do we know that the scores that our students have got in this test are stable, are consistent? There are different ways, but the most important ones and common ones at the same time are 2. They are, number 1, test retest method. What does it mean? It means that you make a test for your students, and after a short period of time you repeat making this test for the same students. So how many scores or sets of scores that you are going to have for the same students by doing the same test? 2 sets. You are going to compare between them to correlate, to compute the correlation, okay, to calculate the correlation between these two sets of scores. If you find that they are comparable, okay, they are close to each other, this means that your test is reliable. Why? Because the scores that your students have got in the two times are what? Similar or are comparable. Okay? But if you find that there is a big gap between the scores on the first time and the second time, so this means that your test is unreliable, because the scores that you have got from applying the test or making the test for the two times are not comparable, are totally different from each other. Okay, so this is what do we call this method? It is called the test-retest method. Okay, some people say that this approach or this method, which is the test-retest method, has three drawbacks, three shortcomings, three weak points. What are they? Number one, it requires two administrations of the same test for the same group of students under the same conditions. Okay, so here you are going, as we said, to do or to make the same test for the same students for two times, but you have to make sure that the conditions, the environment, the classroom in which you are making the test, the materials you are using for making the test, the teachers who are helping you in observing the test, the student himself is the same student, okay, physiologically and psychologically, the same student that he has taken the first test. Is it clear? So you see, it is too difficult to make sure that all these things are available for the two times. Number two, human beings are intelligent and dynamic creatures. They are always involved in the process of learning. These are facts that we know about human beings. Thus, their abilities are most likely to change from one administration to another, especially when the interval between the two testing sessions is long. Okay? So here when you are making, when the time that separates between the two tests is long, this will give your students the chance to learn, to improve their level, to improve their knowledge. Okay? So maybe when they are going to take the test for the second time, they are going to do better. And here you are going to find a big difference, big gap between their scores in the first time and the second time. Number three, practice effect. So your students have taken the test for the first time, and when they are going to take the same test for the second time, of course they are going to be familiar with what? Familiar with the type of the questions that you use, familiar with the type of the procedure, familiar with everything that is related to the test, so they are going to be what? To perform better. Okay? That's why some experts in language testing, they prefer to use the second method in testing or in measuring the reliability of the test, which is the equivalence or parallel forms method. What does it mean? That also you are going to test the same students, same group of students, but you are not going to use the same test. You are going to use a parallel one, a comparable one. Okay? The same content, it is going to be about the same material, but you are going to change what? The items. Okay? The sentences, for instance, the responses. So here, you, for instance, in the first test, you were testing present simple tense. Okay? In the second test, also you test what? Present simple tense. But the sentences that you are using, okay, the clues, the options, the choices that you are using to test the present simple tense and the two tests are what? Are different. So here we are using what? The parallel forms method. Okay, and after you make the parallel form, the parallel test for your students, you are going to correlate between the scores, the two sets of the scores that they have got in the two tests. And as we said, that if you got a comparable result, or if you get that these test scores are comparable, so this means that your test was reliable. We have what? Factors affecting test reliability. What are they? Number one, fluctuations in the psychological and physiological conditions of the testees. Okay, so when you repeat doing the test again, whether the same test or another form of the test, maybe it is not the same student. Okay, maybe he has a problem, or suffering from a psychological thing, okay, a problem at home, a problem with his friends, or maybe he was sick, so physiologically he was not ready in the second time. Okay, so these things may affect the performance of your students. Also, there are factors related to the test itself. Test length. The longer the test is, the more reliable it would be. Of course, a test of 5 items, 5 questions, will be better than a test of only 2 items or 2 questions. Okay? Test items homogeneity, which means that it is generally believed that the more homogeneous the test items are, the more consistent scores you are going to get. For instance, a test of grammar should include items that should all be about what? About grammar. You should not include with the grammar questions or items about pronunciation or vocabulary. This will affect the reliability of the scores, the consistency of the scores. Ambiguity of instructions and items. Okay, if the instructions, the how to form of the question, okay, or what is required from the students to do is not clear for the student, this also will affect the reliability or the scores of the students. Also, there are factors related to the test administration. We said that when you are going to do the test for 2 times, you have to make sure that you are having the same environment in the 2 times. Okay, and this sometimes can be difficult to be achieved. So when you are having a different environment in each time you are making or conducting the test, this will affect the test reliability. Also, there are factors related to test scoring. Who's going to score the test? The teacher. Okay, most of the times the teacher who has put the test, he is the scorer or the rater. And we have here 2 types of factors that can affect the reliability of the scoring of the test. So if the test is going to be scored by the same teacher in the 2 times, okay, and here especially we are talking about the subjective test. For instance, writing, okay, essay writing or composition writing or speaking. So when you are going to test your students for 2 times, okay, and score his performance in writing or in speaking, of course we are not going, or you as a teacher will not give the same score in these 2 times. Each time you are going to feel or to think that there are things that are more important than the other that you should focus on. Okay, so when we are talking about the same scorer, the same teacher who is scoring the test, but he is giving or she is giving a different score in each time, we are talking about what do we call this? We call it intra-rater reliability. Okay, we are talking about the same teacher, but this teacher who is scoring the test in the 2 times, it is, as we said, it is difficult to give the same score in these 2 times. Due to what? Due to the difference in the subjective judgment that he is going to make on the performance of the students in the 2 times. So this is called what? Intra rate reliability. But if you are giving this test to be scored for the two teachers, okay, make or give the writing test, or make the speaking test scored by two teachers. Again, you are not going to have the same scores because each teacher has his or her own subjective judgment on the performance of the student. So when we are having a difference in the scores because we have two teachers, here it is called what? Inter-rate reliability. Inter-rate reliability. And here, when we are talking about the reliability of scoring, we mean by what? We mean by this only the subjective types of tests, like as we said, the writing test and the speaking test. The objective test, like the multiple choice test, the true-false test, the matching test, if you remember, they are easy to have reliability because if you remember, we said that such types of questions are objective because they have only one correct answer. If you make the same teacher correct these tests for more than once, he will or she will give the same score. If you give the same test to be corrected or marked or scored by two teachers, they will also give the same score or mark because as we know, for these types of tests, for the objective test, we have only one correct answer. Okay. So the third important feature of tests is called practicality. And practicality refers to the ease of administration, ease of scoring, and ease of interpretation and application of the test. If we take them one by one, we can say that ease of test administration refers to what? To the clarity and simplicity of directions. We are talking about the directions that are given to the students before having the test, what they should do and what they shouldn't do, which items that they can use and which things that they are forbidden to be used or to be taken with them to their seats. Okay? So these directions should be made in simple language and that can be understood by all levels of students. Also, test administration is related to what? To the amount of time in which the test can be finished by the students, the number of subtests, okay, the amount of equipment and materials that are needed to have or to make the test or to conduct the test by the students, the amount of guidance that the students need. Maybe sometimes the students, they need to ask questions related to the test. So there should be someone who is ready to help them whenever they need help. Also, practicality is related to test scoring. And here we are talking about the criteria of objectivity, simplicity, and machine scorability. Okay, so usually the objective tests are easier to be scored than what? Than the subjective test. The multiple choice items, the true-false items, the matching items are easier to be scored than the writing test or the speaking test. But at the same time, there are tests which are easy to be constructed. Which tests that are easy to be constructed? The subjective test. Okay, so the writing essay or writing composition test or speaking test are easy to be constructed, they do not take so much time and effort from the teacher to construct them or to write their test items, because here the teacher is going only to write one instruction related to questions on writing or on speaking. Whereas if the teacher wants to make a multiple choice test question or a true-false question or a matching question, and we know that each one should consist of more than one item, he is going to what, or she is going to spend a lot of time okay, and spend much effort in constructing or making or writing the items of this test in order to be carefully reflecting the level of the students, suitable to the level of the students, easy to be understood by the students, and so on. Okay, so you see, the subjective tests are easy in constructing, but they are difficult, or they take much time and effort in scoring. On the other side, the objective tests are difficult, are time consuming and effort consuming in constructing, in making, in writing, but they are easy in scoring. Ease of interpretation and application, and here we are talking about the results. Okay, the results of the test should make sense, should be meaningful. The teacher should depend on the analyzing the results of the test in order to make a diagnostic analysis for the strengths and weaknesses of his students. So that's why in order to be practical, the scores should be meaningful, should reflect the level of the students, the knowledge that they have about the material of the test, in order to be of a diagnostic benefit for the teacher. Ease of construction and the cost issue, and we mean here by we are talking about money or about economy. So ease of construction is related to what? To deciding how long the test should be and what items or what type of questions that are to be used. As for the economic factor, it has to deal with what? With the resources. Okay, like the computer sets that we are going to use to make the test or to write the test, the copying facilities, the audiovisual equipment that we need if we are making a speaking test or a listening test, the storage space, okay, as well as the time and effort required to make, conduct, and score the test. The ease of making and scoring the test, the availability of suitable or trained graders and scorers, and administrative logistics. So all these are related to what? To the practicality of the test. The most important feature is called what? Washback. And washback refers to the impact of testing on curriculum design, teaching practices, and learning behavior. Generally speaking, washback is known to have both negative and positive effect on, or it is said that the test has both a negative and positive effect on what? On the curriculum, or on the teaching process, or the learning behavior of the students. How? Because they say that sometimes the teachers, they are teaching for the test only, and learners are learning items in order to pass the test only. Okay? In this case, they say that the test is having a negative effect on, or a negative washback on what? On the curricular design, or the syllabus, or the teaching method, and the learning behavior of the students. Because here the students are not, and the teachers, they are not really doing their jobs. They are only learning, or the teacher is only teaching things in order to what? Make the students pass the test. Okay, so what will happen after that? They will not get a real benefit from the things that they have been taught. Okay, while the positive feedback, or the positive washback that the test can have or can make on the curricula is what? Is that when the teacher and the learner understand that the course has certain objectives, and these objectives should be achieved, and the test is only one, or is only a measure, is only a tool that the teacher can use to make sure that these objectives have been what? Have been achieved. So in this case, the students will will make more effort in learning, and will understand that the test is only going to give them this sense of accomplishment, that they accomplished something, that they learned really something. Okay, so they are not coming here to the class and study and learn not only for the test, for passing the test, but what to get or to gain some sort of knowledge. Okay, this is what Washback. 5. Authenticity. Authenticity is the degree of correspondence of the characteristics of a given language test to the features of a target language task. And we talked about authenticity before. We said that authenticity is related to what real life situations. So here, authenticity means that the test items should reflect the real life situation, should not be about artificial situations. Okay, they should be, or they should reflect real life situation from the students' life themselves in order to be authentic. So authentic test, it means that it is a test that uses language that is as natural as possible, has items that are contextualized rather than isolated, includes meaningful, relevant, and interesting topics, provides some thematic organization to items, such as or through a storyline or episode, and offers tasks that replicate real-world tasks. The 5 previous features are considered to be the most important ones. Okay, what are they? They are validity, reliability, practicality, washback, and authenticity. The features that we are going to talk about now are also important, but they are not just as important as the first 5 ones. So we can say that the test should be accurate. What does it mean that it is accurate? It means that it should be accurate in terms of the language that is used to make the test items. It should be free from any grammatical, spelling, punctuation mistakes. Okay, the test item, the layout of the test items should be accurately designed. The distribution of the scores also should be accurate. No question is going to be given much score or much weight of the scores than the other. Also, the test should be comprehensive, which means that it should cover all the items that the teacher taught. Why? In order to effectively and accurately measure the student's knowledge. And also, the teacher can will be able to measure how much of the course objective has been accomplished. Also, it should be balanced. How the test should be balanced? When it measures both the linguistic and the communicative competencies of the student, in order to check how well the testees are able to use their linguistic knowledge to talk about real or to communicate about real life situations. Also, it should have relevance. What does it mean? It means that it should be related to the fact that the test should neither be too easy nor too difficult, but relevant to the testee's level and should be reasonably challenging. Appropriate for time. Again, it should not be too long, neither too long nor too short, but it can be answered within the time allotted. Diagnostic, in that it provides feedback to the teacher regarding the strengths and the weaknesses of the students for the purposes of remediation. Finally, we can talk about utility or usefulness, in which the test can be useful for the teacher when it provides feedback about the purposes of for the purposes of evaluating the teaching method that the teacher was using with his students and the syllabus or the curriculum adopted. Okay, so these are the important characteristics or features of a good test. Saying this, I will leave you in peace. Thank you.